It's Friday night and I feel alright. No, that silky smooth voice you're hearing is not Dominic Izzo. It is the final day. Izzo will be back on Monday, but standing in for him today, it is the Rants of Coppens. Yes, that's C-O-P-P-E-N-S, C-O-P-P-E-N-S. For those of you listening live via iHeartRadio, Spreaker, or Mojo50.com. And if you're a visual person, head on over to the Mojo50 Radio Facebook page. You will see this show airing in its entirety for you, 6 p.m. on a Friday. It is the freaking weekend. We can relax, right? Wrong. No, I'm just kidding. Definitely relax. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hopefully I'll also educate you because, well, that's kind of what I do. My show airs every Saturday, 5 p.m. Central Time, right here on Mojo50 Radio. If you don't know me from that, you may know me, Andrew Coppens, from By the Numbers, a segment that used to air on this very network every Monday through Friday throughout various programs. Just a 2-minute segment talking numbers, facts, over narrative. And that's kind of been how critical thinking came about to begin with. So I want to address who I am, what I'm about up front, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the show going forward from there. First off, you can follow me on all sorts of the social media sites, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, Parlay, Instagram, freedomhard.com. Don't forget to check that out as it's going through all of the changes and maturations of that program. I really believe in Freedom Hard. I think that they've got a good product going. There's obviously a lot of beta stuff going on there, but please check it out, freedomhard.com. You can find me on all of those at The Coppens Show. If you're watching, you can see that right below here. Go ahead, hit the like button, hit the follow button. I swear to God, it will not kill you to do so. It will only help. But also, head on over to the wonderful podcasting platform of your choice, whether that's iHeartRadio, whether that's Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever have you. Head on over to your favorite situation there. Just hit that search button and then do me a favor, Critical Thinking or Andrew Coppens, and you will find the show. My goal with all of this, obviously, is to educate you guys on who I am. So, what do I stand for? I think that's the first thing, because a lot of you probably have never heard my show, and that's a shame. Shame on you for not listening on the weekends to Mojo50 Radio. Having a life and all might preclude you from doing so. But anyway, what I want you guys to know about here is that I stand for facts, faith, freedom, capital F freedom, and free markets. Faith, facts, free markets, and freedom. Those are kind of the foundational principles of who I am, what I believe personally, but most importantly, what I want you to know is that in any discussion that I have, those are the parameters that I look to. Is there a free market solution? Does faith get involved here? Could it be that other facts might be present that would tell me differently? So that's kind of how I go about my program, is that I'm going to try to give you the raw facts, where both sides stand on a specific issue, and then break it down in a critical thinking mode. Okay, so what are both sides saying? What is the actual truth of the matter? That's who I am. That's what I do every Saturday, 5 p.m. Central, right here on Mojo50 Radio. Again, follow me all over the social medias at The Coppens Show. As for this specific show, it has been one hell of a week. There's been an ongoing, and I believe now into its 5th or 6th day, if I'm doing my math correctly. I think it's the 6th day. The Chicago Teachers Union strike has been ongoing, and it's something that I've been highlighting a few times over at my show on Critical Thinking. And yes, I get it. It's a local issue for me. I live in Chicago. Yes, just like Izzo, although I actually live in the city of Chicago. And folks, unlike Izzo, I make this suit look good. Got the tie, got the suit coat. unlike Izzo, who can't be bothered putting on the whole entire suit. It's almost like, he's missing half his clothing. And, whoa. We don't want to go down that route too much because that's just a mental picture I do not need. Get out. All right. Okay. So now we're done with that. We're also going to talk about this fine individual named Tulsi Gabbard, and fine individual because of what she's been able to do against Hillary Clinton. We're also going to be talking a little bit of By the Numbers. Yes, believe it or not, my segment that was just 2 minutes, I like to take that on my regular show and expand on it. It used to be called Beyond the Numbers, but it's now just going to be moved to By the Numbers since that segment no longer exists on Mojo 50 Radio. And the reasoning for that is, folks, feet in the fire, too many. So I had to take one thing out, and that is the one thing for right now. I'm also putting a different foot in the fire. Hint, it is a page turner, and that is happening as we speak. So I can't get too much more into detail on that. Hopefully there will be an announcement down the road on that, but just know that it's going to be a page turner. All right. Lots and lots of stuff to talk about, including Hong Kong, whatever. Shall we talk about? Oh, and don't forget, apparently if you're a 7-year-old boy whose mother thinks you're a girl, a jury will agree with you. We're going to talk about that, but up first, we've got to talk about Tulsi Gabbard, because I think this is somebody who there's this weird tendency for the conservatives to latch on to, and I'm not sure that they should. And people need to realize who Tulsi Gabbard is more than what she represented this past week. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's remember, folks, Tulsi Gabbard has been given the ire of Hillary Clinton, and she stood back up to Hillary Clinton. So obviously, anybody that does that on the right would be championed beyond belief. Look at what got one Donald Trump the presidency, folks. It was largely because he was able to stand up to Hillary Clinton, stand up to the Clinton political machine, and not care about the consequences. That is why Donald Trump largely was popular with people. He took unpopular stances and said, screw you, to the rest of the political elite. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is kind of doing the same thing, right? Let's not forget, she was called a Russian asset, a useful idiot, all sorts of names by Hillary Clinton, not necessarily by name, but I mean, come on, critical thinking, you can definitely see that she was talking about Tulsi Gabbard. So, it's easy to get caught up in her tough language, and it's also easy to see that in the past couple of debates, she's really gone full-on anti-war. She wants to end the endless wars. She wants to stop regime change wars and even end the war on drugs. All three of these stances are really popular stances within the libertarian movement themselves. So I could see why a libertarian or a conservatarian, if you will, would really glom onto her. Not only is she putting Hillary Clinton in her place, but by and large, she also has these great ideas on peace and strength through peace. Those are really, really hard to not like, right? But what is Tulsi Gabbard's voting record? Who is Tulsi Gabbard, the politician? There's more to a politician than one issue. Now, if you're a one-issue voter, and your one issue is stopping war, then Tulsi Gabbard should be probably on your list of candidates that you would support. In fact, I would say this. The one real big positive for me for Tulsi Gabbard is this. Okay? She has made the Democratic Party look like the party of wars, regime change, and suddenly gone from dove to hawk. While the Republicans somehow now look like the anti-war party by and large. Now, some of that is because Donald Trump has actually put in practice a lot of what Tulsi Gabbard is talking about. Part of that would be pulling out of Syria, whether or not you agree with how it was done or whatever. there's never a good time to leave, okay? But at the same point in time, when we're talking about the Republican Party, would you have ever guessed that they look like the peace party compared to the Democrats? In my lifetime, that has never been the public perception. Now it is. So that's the one big positive right here, is that there's been a paradigm shift. And that means the Republican Party has a chance to have the libertarian voices within their party really start to weigh in and kind of take over the roost, if you will. But who is she beyond that? Well, one, Tulsi Gabbard is a supporter of Medicare for all, aka single payer. She has glommed on to what Bernie Sanders has put on paper. She supports a lot of radical LGBT issues, which is a newer thing for her, but she does support that movement. And I think it's come from one thing and one thing only, is the fact that she has had this conversion from being much more conservative all the way around to being much more liberal on social issues. And she's talked a lot about that, and we'll get into it. But know this, on the LGBT issue, she has had a ton of pushback. A ton of people attack her within Hawaii and within the Democratic Party in general about the very issue of her stances, her personal beliefs on LGBT issues, things like gay marriage and abortion. She personally holds some very conservative values when it comes to it, but she's really flipped to a very socially liberal policy when it comes to government action. Okay, but also, not even on the social issues, she supports bringing back Glass-Steagall. And you can look that up to understand all of it, but just know this. It's basically a version of monopoly busting, and also a version of taking the average American and not allowing that average American to do banking and investing within the same company. And there's a whole litany of things that are wrong with going back to Glass-Steagall. She's also, on the energy side, against nuclear energy. And she is much, much, much more aligned with the progressive talk on climate change. Now, I think if you're a conservative or a libertarian listening to this show, I don't have to tell you why nuclear energy is a positive for this country, why supporting nuclear energy is the easiest way to help the climate. But the fact that she is in lockstep with the Democratic Party on this very issue should be all you need to know here. So when we go down all of these things, she's for this Equality Act, she's for, all of these anti-discrimination acts and all of these things that, frankly, are already codified in law. I don't understand the need for it. If you continue down, if you go to her website, you'll see list after list after list after list after list of issues. And each one of them basically doesn't sound anything like a conservative or most libertarians would actually support. She supports government intervention in our healthcare, but she doesn't support government intervention in other aspects of our lives. She's a very interesting character to get your mind around here. But my larger point in all of this, okay, is this. She also backed Bernie Sanders in the last Democratic primary for president. Now, she says that it was because of Hillary's foreign policy, but look at her voting record. Look at where she stands on the issues today. Medicare for all, supported by Tulsi Gabbard, not Elizabeth Warren's version, or not anybody else's version, but Bernie Sanders' version of Medicare for all is her policy. She stands closer to Bernie Sanders than she does anybody else on that stage in the Democratic primary. She's not a better version of Joe Biden or a younger version of Joe Biden or anything else. Yeah, she's got some viewpoints that you might like here, but Tulsi is not your friend if you're a libertarian or a conservatarian. Not even close. If you value free markets and individual liberty, she is not your candidate. She is the candidate of government say-so in your life. It's just that she believes that the left should dictate social constructs to you, not you dictating to the government what you can and can't do. Okay? Now I want you to think about this. When we talk about this candidate and why she's so polarizing, it has a lot to do with how she put together this whole 180 in her career. How did she become more liberal, become super progressive from a conservative background in Hawaii? How does that happen? She says that it was, according to her service overseas, which she wrote about in 2011, saying the following: "The contrast between our society and those in the Middle East made me realize that the reason those societies are so oppressive is that they are essentially theocracies where the government and government leaders wield the power to both define and then enforce morality. I began to realize that the positions I had held previously regarding the issues of choice and gay marriage were rooted in the same premise held by those in power in the oppressive Middle East regimes that I saw." So I just want to give you that perspective as we move forward, because oh my, is she not a candidate that you should be supporting if you have an R next to your name or an L next to your name for libertarian? She's not your actual candidate. We can cheer on all that we want about this whole war between her and Hillary Clinton and hope to God those two duke it out. I think it's amazing to watch somebody stand up to Hillary Clinton, but there's a difference between applauding that and suddenly thinking that Tulsi Gabbard is a candidate worth supporting. She is not, if you have those types of values and viewpoints and beliefs. Okay? That's who Tulsi Gabbard is today. That is what she believes, advocates, and supports as her own platform. All right. So as we move forward here, we have got to talk about another insane story from this week, and really a story that's been going on for, unfortunately, about 4 or 5 years now. And I mentioned, when is a 7-year-old boy a girl, and a jury will tell you that? Well, I still can't get over this story from Tuesday. It's a story of how a 7-year-old boy in Texas, who has been the subject of a bitter parental battle over their son's gender, yes, a 7-year-old named James or Luna, depending on if you're the mom or the dad. Holy crap. It is insane what happened. Now, a lot of people have talked about this case. A lot of people have broken stuff down. But I want you to remember 2 things here. One, this was not the court's decision here. This was a decision of the jury. This decision of the jury ruled that the mother should have sole managing conservatorship, which means that she gets to make all of the medical, psychological, and other decisions for the twin boys. Yes, there are twins involved in this situation, one of which happens to, according to the mother, have gender dysphoria and has been presenting as a girl at school already. 7. Started when it was 3 years old to when now they're going to school and presents as a female, uses the female name, all of those sorts of things. That's all going on, okay? So why would she be getting sole conservatorship? Why would that happen? Well, what you need to know also is that there were 2 questions to be answered. One was, should there be, basically consider it co-parenting, right? Joint custody, if you will, that the decisions made for the children are made by the mom and the father. Then the second question was, if not, who gets the sole conservatorship? The father, Jeff, the father had been going for sole conservatorship. He believed that he should have that right because of what the mother had been doing to the son, James. Okay. He brought, by the way, Jeff brought multitudes of evidence of potential abuse, clear problems with the boy not wanting to present as a girl, and so on and so forth. So how did the mom get this? I can't believe that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I can believe that a jury would say that the mother has the better chance of being the sole conservator over the father, because that is how things have been going in the court system for decades now. I don't think it's necessarily right. I think it needs to be on an individual case, and we haven't seen that in a very positive light in the last 20, 30 years. I think when you take a look at the court cases, it's something like 90, 95% of all cases where sole custody is awarded, it's awarded to the mother and not the father, even in cases where the mother is provably worse off than the father in multitudes of areas. So how did the mom know her son was a girl? Shoot. I just assumed the mom's gender too. I'm sorry. Anyway, according to the Texan, Texan.com, the factors that convinced Jagorlius that her son is really her daughter include his affinity for the movie Frozen and his request to get a girl toy from McDonald's one day. She also says that he started expressing a wish to dress in girls' clothing. Now, other key points include Gregorius buying her son dresses and painting his fingernails when the son was just 3 years old. Now, the father claims that she used several other methods of manipulation, including locking the boy in his room and telling him that the monsters only eat boys, and the father speculating that Gregorius would withhold affection from James if he did not act like a girl. Those are the facts. They're undeniable. Jeff has documents and documents and documents here. This is clearly, folks, clearly child abuse, plain and simple. This is the mother forcing a 3-year-old to present as a girl? Why? That's my question here. Why would a mother want that? Now, it would be different. It's different than saying, hey, Mom, I really want to watch Frozen. You know how many 3-year-old boys want to watch Frozen? Plenty of them. You know how many 3-year-old boys would want to watch The Little Mermaid or whatever Disney movie is out there? Are you kidding me with this stuff? Furthermore, in all of this, the why. For me, it speaks to an issue, a deep-seated issue with the mother. And I want to point out one part of this as I go into this. Now, Gregorius is not the biological mother here, okay? So my working theory with this is they got twins out of an in vitro fertilization. And when they got the twins here, what happened? Well, one of them happened to be a boy. Maybe the mother wanted a girl and a boy at some point in their life. And something mentally snapped within the mother to do this. Make no mistake about this. She is doing this to the child. Now, what's going to come up here, if all of this stands, if the father doesn't continue this fight, is that a 7-year-old who may or may not actually be confused about the gender, to undergo puberty blockers, present as a female at school, eventually have surgery to basically chemically castrate the boy parts within him. This is absolutely insane that a jury of people thought that this was okay. And would you look at that? It's just time for us to take a break. We'll maybe continue this discussion on the flip side. I'm Andrew Coppins filling in for Dominic Izzo on the Rants of Izzo. We'll see you on the flip side right here on Mojo 50 Radio. Welcome back to the Rants of Coppins. Yes, it's Andrew Coppins, host of Critical Thinking, here on Mojo 50 Radio during the weekend, in place of Dominic Izzo on the Rants of Izzo program. I have to say a thank you to Izzo for giving me this platform. This didn't have to happen. I'm just a lowly weekend host, but here I am on a daily show, and I am super pumped about it. I hope you guys are enjoying what I am bringing to the table, or not bringing to the table, aka way better looking, way sharper dressed folks. Yes, if you are not watching this show, head over to the Facebook page for Mojo 50 Radio. You can see me, and you can see what's going on with this entire show. So last we left off, we were talking about a 7-year-old boy who is about to go through years of destructive physical, mental, and emotional situations. He's about to be chemically castrated, aka puberty blocked. He's about to not be able to ever have children should he decide later in life, which, by the way, over 85% of kids, this is where the numbers of my entire show on the weekend comes into play. This is where the numbers come in. 85% of all people who have this type of situation happen to them at a very young age, by the time they're in their early 20s, end up wanting to have a reversal of this situation. It turns out that being a 7-year-old, being a 10-year-old, being a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old, it turns out that your body and your mind may not be fully formed. You may not actually want to be a girl or a boy if you're a girl. It turns out that there is a lot to not like about this situation. But back to what we were talking about, because I want to get to the why. Why is this happening? Now, I was talking about, it's one thing if the 3-year-old or the 5-year-old or the 7-year-old is into Frozen or into dolls or into any of those types of things. It is one thing if that is just simply an interest of that individual. It is a whole nother thing if that individual, in this case, James Youngblood, were to come up to the mother and say, "Mom, I just don't feel like a boy. I feel like I am a girl." That has never documented happened in this situation. Not once has that happened. So why? Why would a jury look at this situation? Now, mind you, the other part in all of this is that in Texas, there are 2 questions that get asked. One, should there be joint conservatorship over the child? Okay? Basically, joint custody. If the answer is yes, you stop right there. If the answer is no, then the next question is, should there be sole conservatorship? And in this case, the person petitioning for sole conservatorship was James's dad, Jeff. Jeff was trying to get sole conservatorship, basically control over medical decisions, control over psychological decisions, living decisions, all of those sorts of things, right? The dad was trying to get that custody. But in Texas, the answer is, if the answer is yes for that question of sole conservatorship, the next question then is whom gets that sole conservatorship? It's not if the petitioner is going to be that person, it's who. Either one of them could be. And that is a distinction that every one of you needs to realize, because it's an important distinction when we're talking about this type of a case. Juries, this was 11 of 12. Now, this was a civil matter, so you don't need to have, all 12 people agreeing on this. But 11 of 12 think that this situation was okay? I want you to think about that. Does that make any logical sense to you? Whether you agree that the child actually is transgendered or going through gender dysphoria or whatever have you? Do you think it's okay at 7 years old to give control to an individual who has demonstrated multiple times that they have an agenda here? The agenda is not the health and well-being of the child. Their agenda very clearly here is turning their child from a boy into a girl. The mother here has demonstrated, documented, provably done what? Advocated for one thing. It's not that they're looking for the child to tell them what is going on or asking the child what they would like to do. The mother has said, you are going to dress as a girl. You're going to present as a girl. You're going to go to school as a girl, whether you like it or not. Now, who I feel really bad for in this entire situation is James, the young child at the center of this all. Because here we have a child who may or may not want to be a girl, but also presents as a boy in front of their father. So either the child is trying to do one of two things. Either the child is actually a boy, wants to be a boy, and presents that when he's away from the parent who is controlling this situation, or the child is simply trying to fill the gender role that they think the parent on both sides would like. Now, what I find really interesting about all of this in this entire situation is that the people who are on the outside, the people who are not, or do not, I should say, have a vested interest in one outcome or the other, the majority of the people that were presented in this entire trial, the majority of them did what? Oh, that's right. Showed that the boy presented as a boy in front of them. That's not gender conforming. A 7-year-old doesn't understand what gender conforming is. And then final point here on this entire thing. If this is happening in the state of Texas, can you imagine the insanity that this would open up in states like California, Washington, New York? Can you imagine in Illinois, of all places, what's going to happen to similar situations? All I know is that no matter what the 7-year-old says or doesn't say, nobody should be allowed to make a medical decision that affects the rest of that individual's life by themselves. Nobody. Whether you want to say this person's going to present as a boy or this person's presenting as a girl or whatever have you, there has to be a consensus, an agreement between the parents. And if not, you have to err on the side of protecting the child's future. You are talking about making life-altering medical decisions, psychological decisions, things that cannot just simply be reversed with a flip of the switch or snapping of your fingers. That should never, ever be the decision of the court. That should never happen here in America. Medical decisions are supposed to be made by both of the parents, regardless of the situation between the parents. If they cannot come to a conclusion, there should be a court decision. That court decision should be very simple. Unless it's medically necessary, you err on the side of making sure that when this child turns 18, they get to make the decision for themselves. How does that even happen in anywhere in Texas, or let alone the rest of this country? It is medically insane. It is judiciously insane. I cannot believe 11 jurors would have thought this. Now, if you would have told me 1 or 2 or 3, I would believe you, because it just depends on what jury got sat. But 11 of 12? All right, folks, we're going to move on from that insanity to the continued insanity happening in Washington, D.C. right now. Of course, all the rage now is that Donald Trump happened to use the word lynching when talking about what? The political lynching that's happening to him and happening around Washington, D.C. And I want to be very clear here. I don't necessarily agree that that's necessarily what's happening to Donald Trump, but it's very clear to me that something is happening that shouldn't happen in this situation. Something strange is happening to Donald Trump. And that strange thing that's happening is they're not even deciding to vote on actually going through the impeachment inquiry. They're just going to continue on all of the stuff that's happening with the Mueller investigation, as if that gives them the impetus without legally voting on this. It's very strange that that is continuing to happen. If these people really believed in the impeachment process, if they believed they had the goods on Donald Trump, put it through the inquiry process like you're supposed to according to the Constitution, that C word that suddenly is all the rage with the left today, put it through the inquiry process. Put it to a vote. Allow Donald Trump to have his day in court on the Senate side. Why would you not do that if you have the goods? Are you saying that you don't? This process should at least have gone to a vote for a formal impeachment inquiry. That has not happened yet. But, and here's the big but here, it's all about hypocrisy and protecting their own backsides. Because, as Gabbard formally put out earlier today, this week, we've got this.
How dare the president compare lynching to impeachment?
My votes are a protest against an unfair process. The inequities in the impeachment process have been glaring. What we are doing here is not a prosecution, it's a persecution. And indeed, it is a political lynching.
So I will not vote for this nightmare before Christmas. I will not vote for this lynching in the people's house. I will vote against these resolutions.
Even if the president should be impeached, history is going to question whether or not this was just a partisan lynching.
This day feels to me like we're taking a step down the road to becoming a political lynch mob.
And for those of you who say that this isn't about sex, I agree with you. This is about getting rid of the President of the United States. The whole idea is a lynch mob mentality that says this man has to go.
And that, folks, is why I say impeach DC, hashtag it. Hashtag impeach DC. For those who may not have heard or seen my show before, here's where I come down on Trump impeachment mania. Those that are looking to impeach Trump are doing it because, why? They're covering their own asses. As it's been documented time and again from investigative journalists with multiple awards who have worked for the AP, USA Today, all of these mainstream outlets. If they were good enough for these mainstream outlets before, suddenly now they're conspiracy theorists? Hail to the no. It's very clear that the DNC was involved in at least a cover-up, if not outright electioneering from Ukraine towards the 2016 election. Alexandra Chalupa, if you don't know the name, look it up. Look up what Glenn Beck had to say on this entire issue because he did such a great deep dive on this. All you need to know is that Alexandra Chalupa is the ringleader of the entire Russian story. And where did she get this information? From corrupt plutocrats and corrupt oligarchs in the Ukraine. They had a vested interest in using Ukraine as their vessel to launch attacks and bots and all of those things against Donald Trump. So anything, just like back in the day, anything that's anything you say, I can say against you. Rubber and glue, whatever's rubber, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever bounces off of me sticks to you. That entire situation, that's what's happening here. Make no mistake about it. The DNC is 1,000% guilty of having Ukraine meddle in our election. That exposure cannot happen. That cannot happen. So if Trump were to actually get the Ukraine to do the full investigation, that's what would be exposed in all of this. Whether or not Trump is guilty of his own infractions, irregardless of that, that would be what would be exposed if this investigation went any further. Now, Trump is not an innocent party here either. Okay? He is not an innocent party. This is a guy who has very questionable ethics at the least. Now, why he would say the things that he said in that interview, those people who still think that there's no quid pro quo necessarily there, I beg to differ. I just do. It's just too obvious. Now, yes, there was no direct quid pro quo. There was no, oh, really? If you don't do this, I'm doing this to you situation. Or if you do this, I will do this for you situation. There was none of that necessarily. But come on. He's smart enough. Donald Trump is smart enough to figure out if he says those things that he's going to get nailed. So he said it in a different way. Now, he also couches a lot of things around other, things, saying, hey, we wanted the corruption to stop there. We needed the proof of that, yada, yada, yada. He says all of those things, right? And if you add them all up, it would seem like maybe Trump was actually right in holding back that money. But we all know, if you can do critical thinking, you have to know that there was a definite quid pro quo. But here's the issue here. And here's the question that nobody in DC seems to want to ask or answer. What happens if what was best for Trump and his campaign also happens to be best for the country? Is that suddenly something that the President of the United States, who is supposed to be the arbiter of our foreign policy and all of those things, suddenly they're supposed to, he or she, let's say it's a hypothetical situation, they find this information out. They find out that there might be corruption happening abroad and people looking into meddling into our own elections. If they find that information out, are they suddenly not supposed to pursue this anymore just because there might be a perception of political benefit for themselves? Let's be honest here. These two things are not mutually exclusive all the time. And if so, who would be the proper person to bring this up? Mike Pence? Mike Pompeo? Anybody involved in the Trump White House? What about the ranking members of Congress from the Republican side? How about the ranking members of Congress on the Democrat side? What about the ranking members of the Senate? Mitch McConnell is going to be the person to bring this up? Oh, that's right. None of them have the power to do anything about it. They can write strongly worded letters. Mind you, those 4 Democratic senators who bothered to put their names in writing, literally saying they will withhold their support if this X, Y, and Z doesn't happen. Exactly a quid pro quo situation. So we have Joe Biden and his son being investigated in that entire Burisma situation, whether it was before, after, or during the time that Hunter Biden was there. Doesn't matter. Burisma clearly had some corrupt dealings going on, and the fact that Hunter Biden was there, kind of shady. No question about that. And then you've got all of the questions about the other side of corruption here. You got the CrowdStrike situation. Whether you believe the conspiracy theory or not, it should be investigated. It has never been investigated. According to multiple sources, there's something fishy there. Okay? Now that we talk all about those things, here is the third key point. The sons of Joe Biden, John Kerry, and Nancy Pelosi, three of the big people. We're talking about the vice president, at the time the Secretary of State, and the Speaker of the House, or the leader of the minority in the House. All three of them had their sons working in the Ukraine. They've all made millions of dollars off of their work in the Ukraine. How does that happen if all of those people, you mean to tell me that Joe Biden didn't know about the corruption, or that John Kerry or Nancy Pelosi were not privy to information about the widespread corruption and the widespread oligarchy that was happening in the Ukraine? You mean to tell me that those things just right over the top of their heads? You're out of your mind if they didn't know exactly what was going on. And instead, what did they do? Chose to use that bit of information to their financial family benefit. How is that any different than what they're charging Donald Trump having to do here? So you've got the DNC, you've got Donald Trump, and you've got three of the top Democrats, not to mention the four other Democratic senators, all in the mix here. All of those people are involved in some sort of corruption, some sort of ethical problem when it comes to the Ukraine. Then we also have the reports of the Ukraine actually trying to meddle in our elections, a la what was going on with the 2016 presidential election. This is just insanity, my friends. Absolute, utter insanity happening. So, with all that said, impeach DC. Everybody needs to go. Nancy Pelosi should have been gone a long time ago. Joe Biden should never see the White House because of what was going on in Ukraine and China and all the backroom dealings that have gone on between him and the rest of the people that are involved with him. Nancy Pelosi goes. Joe Biden goes away. Donald Trump arguably should be impeached. I don't necessarily believe that what took place here was a provable high crime or misdemeanor. And if it was, we've got a whole lot of members of Congress to impeach, which I'm totally fine with. But what I cannot stand is all of these moral preening people on the Democratic side, the Adam Schiffs and all of these people, the Eric Swalwells, preaching to us about ethics and morality in our government when they support the very same people who have been as craven as humanly possible when it comes to the Ukraine situation. If you know that there's corruption, if you know that there's bad faith dealings happening in an area, why in the blue hell would you allow that to happen? Why? I do not understand that. So what I'm calling for with this Impeach DC movement is every single possible elected official needs to go. Every single career bureaucrat needs to go. We need to blow up the apparatuses of Washington, D.C. There's corruption in the FBI. There's corruption in the CIA. There's very clear deep state stuff happening here, okay? It's very clear. It's obvious from John Brennan to all the other people that are involved in what they're doing to Donald Trump, what James Comey has done, what Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and on and on and on and on. These are not isolated incidents. And I don't care, had this been Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, for that matter. If it were reversed and it was Republican members of the FBI and CIA and yada, 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 doing the dirty work to try to get them put out of office, I don't care. Every single person in leadership should be gone. Every one of them. Every single one of them. Every single elected official. The fact of the matter is Congress has about an 18 to 22%, depends on the poll that you follow, 18% approval rating with Republicans. It's not even in the 30s when you talk to Democrats. And independents, it's somewhere in the 20s. That is pathetic. But you know what's even more pathetic? This whole, but not my congressman or not my senator. Are you kidding me? They're all idiotically corrupt. They all need to be sent home. We need fresh blood to help wipe the system clean. We need people that are going to stand up and search for the actual truth instead of playing craven politics. You imagine a world where there's no Nancy Pelosi, no Mitch McConnell, no Chuck Schumer. None of these people are in power anymore. Yes, we have a power vacuum, but people that will fill it will be actual servants, actual people who want to serve the public. It's absolutely pathetic that we've got so many players in the DNC, FBI, CIA, IRS, on and on and on. It's absolutely pathetic that we've got all of those types of people. We don't even bother to touch those when you've got Donald Trump and the people in the Justice Department that could prosecute them and go after them for their corruption and their parts in all of this. But no action gets really taken except for Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. No actions get taken. It's absolutely 100% pathetic. And that's what I'm talking about with this Impeach DC movement. So, hopefully you'll join me. Hit up that hashtag ImpeachDC. And I would love to hear your ideas on who needs to be impeached, who should be gone from their offices. All of those types of things are vitally important. All right. With that being said, it is time for us to take a break here on, well, I was about to say critical thinking, but here on the Rants of Coppins, standing in for Dominic Izzo on this Friday evening. You guys keep on enjoying your Friday evening with me. And, of course, follow along at The Coppins Show on Twitter, on Facebook, all of those things. Hit me up. Let's conversate throughout this program. So, on that note, let's just flip over to the commercial break. And on the flip side, we'll be talking AOC. We'll be talking about, a little by the numbers with some guy named Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And, of course, the latest on the Chicago Teachers Union strike. Because, holy crap, America, pay attention. We'll be right back here on Mojo 50 Radio. Welcome back to the Rants of Coppins, not the Rants of Izzo. That's right, somebody's got to class this place up once in a while. It is Friday, hour 2 of the program, a maiden second hour for me, myself, and I. And if you don't know who I am Andrew Coppins, host of Critical Thinking, every Saturday, 5 p.m. Central Time, right here on Mojo 50 Radio. And if you want to talk along with me during the show, please do so. Hit me up on the socials at The Coppins Show. That's where you can find the Facebook page. The YouTube page, you can simply find it by going to Andrew Coppins. Just type in my first and last name. You'll find me right away. And there's so much to get into in this final hour of the week. We're going to start things off with a little bit of talk about Bernie Sanders. Yes, the wonderful octogenarian who magically got the endorsement of the youngest congresswoman to ever be elected to the United States Congress. Of course, we're talking about the founding member of the Lying Liars Club over at my show. We're talking Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, if you were living under a rock, perhaps you didn't know this, but Bernie Sanders got the endorsement, the ringing endorsement of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I believe one other person was on the stage. I think her name is Michelle Moore. Don't really know anything about her, so we're going to just kind of put that to the side here. But this should not be shocking to anybody who pays attention, because AOC is what? A dyed-in-the-wool socialist. She is, folks, a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialist of America, who prior to this upcoming election cycle, this 2020 election cycle, was all about activating and advocating for people within the Democratic Party. That has all changed because they are now becoming an active political party of their own. They are no longer just going to send candidates through the Democratic Party to get elected. They're just going to do it themselves. It's going to be an interesting experiment nonetheless, but I want to talk about Bernie Sanders and this endorsement because I find it interesting on its face that the person who rails against all of these social justice things, right, intersectional left, that is who AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley and all of those people, Rashida Tlaib, all of those types of people, they're all intersectional left. So race and gender and sexual orientation matter most. So who do they endorse? Not the female candidate, not Elizabeth Warren, not Kamala Harris, not Cory Booker, for crying out loud, who, well, him and Lindsey Graham might have a few things in common. Instead, they go with the endorsement of the octogenarian, the 80-plus-year-old guy who just had a heart attack, Bernie Sanders. There's no question about this for me, folks. This is all about passing the torch of socialism within the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders, this is likely his last go-around as a presidential candidate, likely his last go-around as a senator. We're probably not going to see him on the political scene for very much longer. Now, people have kind of downplayed this as a passing of the torch, but they've downplayed it as a passing of the torch inside the Democratic Party. Make no mistake about this. For the socialist here in America, this was a big-time bat signal, or sickle and hammer signal, if you will, that no longer is Bernie Sanders the leader of this movement. He is no longer the person leading the way. That is going to be AOC. Now, we've seen Bernie Sanders joke around about AOC getting a cabinet position. I don't think he's actually joking around. I would be really frightened by that, just simply by who this person is, what she has said, the absolute bat-nuts crazy things she has said. That included this earlier this week when talking to Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook.
I don't remember everything that was in the question.
That's all right. I'll move on. Can you explain why you've named the Daily Caller, a publication well-documented with ties to white supremacists, as an official fact-checker for Facebook?
Congresswoman, sure. We actually don't appoint the independent fact-checkers. They go through an independent organization called the Independent Fact-Checking Network that has a rigorous standard for who they allow to serve as a fact-checker.
So you would say that white supremacists tied publications meet a rigorous standard for fact-checking? Thank you.
Congresswoman, I would say that we're not the one assessing that standard. The International Fact-Checking Network is the one who is setting that standard.
I mean, how nuts do you have to be? How stupid? She has a degree in economics, folks. How dumb do you have to be to not understand simple facts that Facebook runs through an independent organization? And that independent organization probably has done the fact-checking of the organization in question, the Daily Caller. Now, good for the Daily Caller to call out AOC in her bullcrap, because they did it very forcefully, talking about minority ownership, talking about all of the things that they have done in that realm. So I big up them for that. But make no mistake about it, folks, if she gets a sniff of being in the cabinet or anything of an Elizabeth Warren, who looks more and more likely the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination for president, if she even gets into the discussion, if somehow Bernie Sanders pulls this out, which seems less and less likely as time goes on, well, you're going to see a very, very different type of a cabinet than anybody is used to. But what I want to warn you about more than anything else when it comes to this is, do not forget that above and beyond being in the Democratic Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialist of America. What she is setting herself up to do is become not only the mouthpiece of the DSA, but the leader of the DSA movement here in America, right? So we've got somebody who's setting herself up to take power, because there are 73, count them, 73 members of the DSA in various either state, local, or federal jobs. And by jobs, I mean federal elected or state elected or locally elected positions here in America already. She's going to be able to lead this movement going forward. And if you know the DSA platforms, and if you go over to Critical Thinking and find it, I believe it was 2 episodes ago, that we talked about the dangers of the DSA and what they believe. Folks, we're going down a very dangerous path, and you need to wake up, because this isn't the run-of-the-mill Bernie Sanders who's going to work within the Democratic process. So you have to be awake to this now, and we need to stop this in the bud now. When she has no power, real power, all she has left is the bully pulpit, just like me. Her power is no greater than mine if she no longer is in Congress. So, folks, hopefully one of the challengers that's there in Brooklyn will get this, or excuse me, the Bronx, or wherever, whichever one of it is, whichever borough it is in New York City. So hopefully somebody there takes a stand and says, look, I'm not going down the road of full-on socialism. Because it's not socialism light like Bernie Sanders. It's not this cute old man advocating for these positions way out there. If she were to get power, if she were to become a nominee for the presidential candidacy of the Democratic Party, if she gets that, look out, world, look out, America. You will not recognize your country very fast. All right, so from transformative baton passing back to Bernie Sanders. And folks, if you listen to Mojo 50 Radio, a lot of you are likely to have heard me doing this whole by the number segment each and every Monday through Friday. And that's really where all of this started, right? Well, wouldn't you know it? That unfortunately is no longer part of the program at Mojo 50 Radio. And I talked about that earlier. I won't go into too much detail, but the by the number segment was the impetus for my show, Critical Thinking. So why not go by the numbers right here, right? On this Friday night, why not just have a little bit of fun with some numbers? With that in mind, what I want to do here is tackle a topic that kind of resurfaced lately, and it's one that kind of highlights the differences between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. So let's set up some basic facts and what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is free college and student loan debt forgiveness. There are some differences between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on this very topic. But I want to highlight Bernie Sanders more than Elizabeth Warren here because it shows just how insane this entire idea is. Because let's remember, Bernie Sanders says free college for everyone. Elizabeth Warren, she just simply wants those people under $100,000, if their parents are earning that, to be able to attend college for free. So let's go ahead and set up the basic facts here. The cost of tuition at a four-year public school has doubled in price since 1980. The cost of tuition at a private institution has gone up threefold since that 1980 year. Given the doubling in price and the tripling in price, we know one thing. Inflation cannot be the single cause for the rising cost of tuition. And that is what these two people are trying to solve, right? The rising cost of tuition, the crazy debt that people are having to rack up just to get a bachelor's degree here in America. So what other factors are there? How did we get to a doubling and a tripling of price depending on public or private college that you like to attend? Well, it turns out increasing attendance probably has a little bit of something to do with this. Take this fact, 45% attendance of college. People that graduated high school, 45% of them in 1960 went on to go to a four-year institution. That's 67% as of 2017's numbers. So that means we have to have seen an increase in support staff, facilities, and all of those accoutrements. But still, that alone, plus inflation, doesn't account for the unbelievably skyrocketing prices and the cost of attendance. Now, what could another potential issue be here? Well, let's look at student loans. That's the culprit for all of this, right? Those bastard student loan companies. Well, did you know that over the last 60 years, loans have gone from an average of $3,500 to over $10,000 per student per year when you've adjusted for inflation? Over 60 years, we've gone almost, $6,500 difference accounting for inflation? And it's also a whopping 186% increase in just those 60 years. Think about that, 186%. So why would that increase in student loans be happening? Well, there was a 2015 study that said for every dollar of subsidized loans, the loans that the government is willing to take on the interest for, the published tuition rate increased nearly 58 cents. So every time a dollar is given out in subsidized loans, tuition rates would rise over half of that amount. That's curious. Now, that would indicate to me that loans have a very large thing to do with the rising cost of tuition prices. Now, this theory of loans causing tuition increases was further bolstered by a study in 2016 by the National Bureau of Economic Research, where they published a working paper titled Accounting for the Rise in College Tuition. What a novel paper title. What was the conclusion of the paper? Well, I will not bore you with all of the details, but the conclusion was that the rise in student loan amounts was more than sufficient to explain the rise in tuition costs. Now, let's compare this entire situation. Let's talk about Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's pet projects. Healthcare. Okay? Let's just take a look at healthcare because they say healthcare costs are out of control and debt and student loan debt and tuition costs out of control. So if both of these things are out of control, how out of control? Well, that National Bureau of Economic Research study noted that the much maligned healthcare costs in this country have actually risen slower than the cost of tuition. In fact, the net tuition today is $10,290. But if we were to follow the rise in prices in healthcare, it would only sit at $8,700 as of 2010. So think about this. Tuition costs are skyrocketing at a rate even faster than the so-called crisis of health insurance premiums and health insurance rates. It doesn't happen because colleges are greedy bastards just trying to get the most money out there. It happens because there's federally guaranteed access to billions and billions of loan dollars. It is the government guarantee of these loans that is driving all of this. So I want you to think about that, because what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and a lot of people on the Democratic side are saying is, well, we need the government to pay for it all, and that'll be the solution. Remember, these are the people that got us into this mess in the very first place. So we're going to expect them to get us out of the mess? Ugh. Anyway, let's just get into the specifics of Sanders' plan to really hammer this point home for you. The feds are supposed to pick up 67% of the tab, with the states picking up 33%. Not a bad deal for the states, right? Wrong. Know this first off, right off the bat. The states are the ones that are responsible for reining in the cost of rising tuition. Think about that. All the while, by the way, having to find more money to hire more full-time professors while cutting the number of adjunct, aka part-time professors. So what would that mean? Naturally, that means more money being spent overall, because, let's use common sense and some critical thinking, hiring full-time professors would cost way more than hiring part-time professors. But don't worry, the feds will guarantee federal money for that hiring of those new full-time professors. I'm sure nothing could possibly go wrong there. I'm sure there's no price inflation. I'm sure there would be no price gouging. Nah, none of that could possibly happen. You know, maybe saying that the person was being hired at $60,000 and that's internal, but then saying, hey, government, it's actually $75,000 and we'll pocket the extra $15,000 to do with what we want for the hundreds and hundreds of professors that they're going to have to hire. If you believe that this measure itself is actually going to decrease costs, then let's look to the federal Parent Plus loan program for proof of how an unfettered program really works. Why do I talk about the Parent Plus loan program? Well, because it's basically free money right now. It is money that the students don't really have to worry about, okay? In the Parent Plus loan program, we have seen a 6% increase in all student loans given out from 2011 to 2017. That accounts for $12.8 billion. $12.8 billion as of the 2017-2018 school year. Now, Money.com points out $16,000 is the average loan that's taken out in the Parent Plus loan program. $16,000, folks. Holy crap. My entire 4-year education at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside did not cost that much. And there's over 800,000 of these Parent Plus loan programs taken out in one academic year alone. Now, the hits just keep on coming. Did you know that 62% of parents are borrowing more than the recommended FAFSA amount? They're borrowing more than what the government is telling you should be borrowing. Now, you could look at that a couple of different ways. And one way would be that maybe what FAFSA is telling you isn't the economic reality that's in front of the family, or simply the family wants to fund some other things on the side and use that money for it. But here's where the recklessness of this program comes into play. 10% are taking loans. 10% of the Parent Plus loan program are taking out $15,000 more than the recommended amount. 15 grand coming out of the pocket beyond what is recommended to help pay for the cost of college. In total, there's $88 billion of plus loan debt existing today, and it's the fourth highest of all the loans out there for student debt. So my question in all of this would be, how does the federal government allow it to happen? It is simply a cash cow for them and the colleges. Literally, if you're the federal government, what you're saying with the Parent Plus loan program is, take all the money you can, take it, and then we collect the interest. If you want to take out $15,000 more than what we're going to recommend, why, if you're doing business that way, it is a smart business decision for the person collecting the loan, because you collect mega dollars of interest. They literally can keep charging more and more and more, and the borrowing will always be guaranteed. There's no incentive either from the federal government or for those public and private institutions that take on these programs to think about what they're charging and cap it. And then there's this other thing, the billions of dollars in endowments. So I would ask, where's the responsibility of the federal government's part here? Why are they allowing anybody, I don't care if you're rich, poor, in the middle, wherever, you get to take out the maximum of tuition, room and board, and the cost of books for a year. Anything else does not go to you. Okay? It's just that simple. It's not my job as a taxpayer to pay for your lifestyle in college. All right. So, that out of the way. What about results? Because, frankly, if results are good, maybe why shouldn't we guarantee access to higher education for everybody if the results are good? Well, let's think about this. There's wage stagnation for graduates with a bachelor's degree right now. In fact, a 2% dip in wages happened between 2017's graduating class and 2018's graduating class. Yet, at the same time, our economy was growing at a healthy clip and wages were starting to go up overall. Now, why would that happen? Well, frankly, because a degree today is virtually like a high school diploma was back in the 1960s. Doesn't really give you a leg up, it just gives you an entry-level position. We could also measure not just dollars and cents, but graduation rates for success. And of course, that's not good news either. Think about this. 25% of those who got a 2-year community college degree, 25% of them actually graduated. Even if you were to stretch it 150% beyond the normal graduation time. Now, Sanders and Warren want to expand 2-year colleges. For that kind of results, let's go to 4-year schools. They're not much better. 33% of first-time college students graduate in 4 years. Give them 2 more years, the number goes to 57%. Again, our investment as taxpayers in the form of guaranteeing these loans is not paying off. Now, we can also see the results of those receiving these newly free money, and we're talking about Pell Grants. 47% graduation rate in 6 years. That's worse than the overall average. Now, those who don't take any subsidized loans, those with the unsubsidized loans, they graduate at 55% clips. Now, how do you explain that 14% difference in graduation rate? Could it be that those who do not have subsidies, do not take free money, having skin in the game, having to pay out a little bit of their own money, might be the case here? That might be a good thing? Oh boy, oh boy. Talk about socialism sucking. And don't you forget about this final point. If you think that the strings that are attached to Bernie Sanders' plan right now end there, you're out of your mind. Let's not forget about what might happen here. What's to stop them from going to K through 12? After all, if you're going to give them free college, shouldn't your K through 12 education be guaranteed by the government? And shouldn't it include all of the strings of what they want you to be taught? Think about that as we go forward. There's no way in hell, in 10 years' time, I will guarantee you, no way in hell that if Bernie Sanders or this type of a plan goes forward for free college and debt relief, that we don't see a complete federal government takeover of K through 12 education. And a second thing, they will ban homeschooling of children. I guarantee you that you as a parent, but those of my generation that are parents, are going to have choice taken away from them. They're going to be forced into the government education system, and that is un-American. And I hope somebody challenges this notion going forward on a legal basis. I'm sure we're going to see it, but this is just nuts. Absolutely nuts, people. And with that being said, I cannot believe we're heading to break again as you hear the music. And on the flip side, we'll be talking the Chicago Teachers Union strike and where things stand in Hong Kong, because apparently that's not a thing for the mainstream media. Right here on Mojo 50 Radio. Back after the break. Welcome back from break once again. Yes, it's the Rants of Coppins. One more segment without your beloved Dominic Izzo in the mix. Of course, you can always follow me on the social medias at The Coppins Show. That's COPPENS. So whatever shall we talk about? Well, folks, just like Izzo, I am from Chicago, although I actually live in the actual city of Chicago. So one of the things that I've been really chronicling and following a lot here is this CTU strike, the Chicago Teachers Union on strike. As we're entering the weekend, we see what? Oh yeah, the teachers have been on strike for now 7 whole days, an entire week plus 2 days, plus the 2 days of the weekend that really don't count because everybody would get those off anyway. But as we enter the weekend, we have no agreement, nothing going on with the CTU. Now, for those of you who have not been around my show, this is a major topic because I firmly believe wholeheartedly that a situation like this could easily come your way. And why? Because this is a pattern across the nation. It's no coincidence that CTU is striking over some of the same demands, literally down to the number of teachers' aides and the number of nurses and the number of classroom deductions and class sizes that they would like, as Los Angeles struck for, as other places across the world, or not world, but across the United States have done in the last year. It's no coincidence. This is a coordinated effort by the American Federation of Teachers. This is a coordinated effort at a national level, at a national union level, right? If they can get this done nationally, there's nowhere for you and I to hide. You cannot avoid what these people would be demanding. And it's not just classroom demands. There are things like affordable housing and all that, and I'll get into it. So what I want you to remember here is that this is all political. It's all about politics and far left activism. This should not be surprising because one of the things I did early on in July was highlight a trip that was done by members of the CTU board of directors, the people that are on the board of the Chicago Teachers Union, meaning people that are teachers, people that are support staff, right? 4 of them went over on a quote-unquote non-sanctioned trip to Venezuela that basically became just a propaganda trip for Nicolas Maduro. It was literally, they just lapped up everything that Nicolas Maduro was saying and the things that were being presented. It was literally like somebody lapping up what was happening in North Korea if they ever got into North Korea, right? Whatever was presented is the truth. They don't give a damn about the truth. They didn't give a damn about the truth when it came to using the CTU's name, maybe not tacitly endorsed, but they used the CTU's name to get money and fundraise and do all the things that they did to make that trip happen this summer. Just to give you an idea of how far left radical the CTU is. That's the same way in LA. It's the same way across the board when it comes to union leadership anywhere in America. They have been socialist from the time they started in the 1800s all the way to today. Just look at the history of unions in this country. Just look. It's no different today. This is all about politics. So what I want you to know about this situation is that, and to remember the children in all of this. Now, the backdrop of all of this is this. Chicago, on average, is spending over $10,500 per student, which is over double the national average. Yet only 56% graduate from high school. 56% graduation rate for double the amount of dollars. And yet the teachers have the audacity to go out there and say that they need more money. Maybe perhaps you are the problem here. Maybe, just maybe, perhaps you need to look in the mirror. You should be doing more with more, not less with more. Now, money is not all of the issue here. Resources, not really the issue for me. It's culture. And Dominic and I have talked about this on my show in the past and on his show. There are no kids seeing role models that care about education by and large in CPS. 300,000 students. Most of them are disadvantaged. Most of them are minority students. The vast majority of them come from economically poor areas. Okay? Kids do not see role models that value an education. Parents see school as the babysitter and the parent, not as a partner, not as an equal partner in helping to raise a child, right? Now, I was lucky enough to have both of my parents in my life growing up, both of my parents together until I was into my 20s. So I was able to see the value of education. My mother went back to school, got her 4-year degree in nursing after going to Bellin College of Nursing, gets a 4-year degree in nursing while in her 30s, raising two kids in middle school, no less. Soccer, baseball, all of the things that we were doing as kids. She still found time to do that. So we got to see firsthand the value of an education and working your ass off for that education. That's what I'm talking about when kids do not see role models here in Chicago doing that. Kids do not see that. They don't see the value of getting an education. Oftentimes, kids who are smart, especially in the African American community here in Chicago and across the United States, are laughed at. That is a culture problem, okay? So how do you address that culture problem? You can't address it by throwing more money at the problem. You need to address it by realizing what the problem is, connecting with the students. That's what good teachers do. There are, I'm sure, plenty of good teachers in CPS and in the CTU. I'm damn sure of that. But there are far too many considering what's being paid out and what's getting done on the graduation rate. And then add in this. Over $15,000 are also spent on operational costs in CPS. Per student, $15,000. That means we're spending over $25,000 per student here in the city. And that's the result we're getting. Now, at the same time, as the strike is continuing to go on and on and on with no real end in sight, it turns out that who shows up? Well, of course, Elizabeth Warren shows up, because nothing says a union situation in Chicago like an elite, rich, white girl from New England coming in here who knows nothing about this situation. Now, yes, Elizabeth Warren used to be a teacher, used to be a union member, I'm sure, because everybody's got to be in the union if you're a teacher at a public institution. But my question is, why the hell was she here? What does she add to the mix other than putting outside pressure on an issue she has no idea about? Literally no clue what's actually happening here on the ground in Chicago. All she really cared about was political posturing and doing what? Trying to put her boot, her big boot from Washington, D.C., on the Chicago Public School District, and ironically, a super progressive mayor in Lori Lightfoot. Now let's bring you up to speed on some of the inner workings of what's actually happening, why this continues on and on and on and on. No end in sight at any point in time. Now let's look at some of the demands here. The demands of the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, are this: a 16% raise in 3 years. Now, we also need to know this. As of right now, they are the second highest paid teachers in the country. On average, they make over $75,000. What they are demanding would put them over $100,000 when you talk about this type of an increase and all of the step increases that happen just for tenure and things like that. Now, the CPS, they've countered. They said, sure, we'll give you 16%, but it'll be over 5 years and not 3 years. I don't think that's an unreasonable demand. I don't think that's an unreasonable demand. Secondly, the CTU is demanding about 2,000 more staff on the record. Now, the CTU is demanding more staff, about 2,000 more staff. People like nurses or guidance counselors or teachers' aides. They want 2,000 in 4 years' time. Now, the CPS has countered, saying they can only afford to hire 200 more staff members. Now, this is against the backdrop of, you've got to remember this, here in Chicago, schools are closing and closing and closing because the educational results out of CPS are awful. More people are going the private route, taking school vouchers, and doing everything they can to get out of CPS to give their children a better chance at a quality education and a better life. Okay? They're taking them out of this system where fights are a daily thing, gun violence is a daily thing. It is a terrible environment all the way around. It's rotten to its core. But they're supposed to spend money on 2,000 more staff as the enrollment declines. Right now, 300,000 students in a city of roughly 3 million people. And finally, we've got to come to this. How do I know that this is a political battle and not an economic battle? Because one of the main sticking points so far in all of this is the demand from the CTU to dictate policy advocacy on CPS's behalf. The CTU wants to say to CPS, this is what you must advocate for at the city level. These are the things. We're talking about affordable housing, rent control, and the kicker beyond all kickers. They want CPS to take money and literally hand out vouchers, if you will, ironically enough, that will be given to first-year teachers to buy housing. That's right. Right here in the city of Chicago, we're supposed to now buy houses for teachers. That's a major sticking point. So is the advocacy of policies that CTU would like to see happen. Not CTU doing this on their own dime, or CTU bothering to, I don't know, take less money for their board members or less money for the leadership and putting that towards their political activity. They're trying to put their political boot on the throat of CPS and say, you are going to do our bidding for us. It's nuts. Now, yes, they're saying that the 16% raise is not what they're looking for, but they're only doing that because, and here's the kicker here, that's the only way that this strike is legal in the state of Illinois. But for me, you just need to look past that. They know that if they give that up on the bargaining table, if they agree to that, they cannot go on strike anymore. Their strike is done. Until they get what they want outside of that, they'll never agree to the economic side of this. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that this strike should be deemed illegal. But nobody has the balls to call CTU on their bluff legally. That's what happens when you have an entire city that is made up of politicians, lawyers, who are what? Progressives. They're on that side of the aisle. They will never challenge CTU on this kind of stuff. Let's also give you a little bit of a history lesson as to why this strike would be illegal. The last strike that took place in 2016, yes, 3 years ago, a strike happened. It was ruled illegal or likely illegal by the Illinois Labor Relations Board because they were found to be striking largely because of things outside the scope of salary and benefits. Those are the only two things you can ever strike over in Illinois when you are a public school teacher. The school teachers union and public service unions can only strike over salary and actual benefits, things like insurance, health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, vacation days, those types of things. Political advocacy is not something that should be bargained over. But this is what is happening right now. If 2016's strike was illegal, this one is even more blatantly, obviously illegal. Somebody needs to bring this up to the Illinois Labor Relations Board. So if you're here in Chicago, if you're a lawyer or know somebody who is, reach out to me on social media at The Coppins Show. Again, that's at The Coppins Show, COPPENS. And let's get this ball rolling, because this is absolutely ridiculous. As we sit here an entire week, kids have been out of school. Kids who are playing in sports are not playing in state championships because of the teachers' own greed. And I'm not talking about individual teachers. I'm talking about the teachers' union. So finally, where does all of that money come from? Where does the CTU think it's going to come from? CPS's budget is already busted. There is no more freaking money. Got it? None. Zip, zero, zilcho. No more money. The CPS, they got a little kick up in the budget because of the state budgetary process that just went down. That's already allocated to pay for the things that are happening. They cannot, by the way, also just go out and loan themselves the money because they have junk bond status. That's how far in the hole CTU has put CPS with their pensions and all of the benefits that they already have on record. Chicago itself cannot afford it. They have a nearly $900 million budget hole that they're trying to get through. There is no more money for Chicago. Are you really going to go to the property taxpayer here in this city, who is one of the highest property taxed people in all of the country, and say, pay me more money? How about this? When you start graduating over 90% of the kids that come through your doors, come to me and ask me for money then. Don't come to me with your bull crap, your bullshit excuses, your bullshit strikes, and your bullshit attitude when you can't produce results. Don't even think about it, especially because you're already one of the highest paid people in your industry, in the entire country. Get off of your political high horse, get your asses back into the classrooms, and stop this crap. The only people that are being hurt are the students that you claim to care about, and you're doing this for the students. No, you're not. They're doing this to line the pockets of the CTU. Board members, the people in leadership, are the only ones who are really going to benefit from this, because guess what? They get to collect more money from you because your salaries are now going up. It's absolutely insane. This is a naked political power grab at the expense of kids, and it's sick, it's wrong, and thankfully, even though Mayor Lori Lightfoot is progressive, she realizes one thing: there's no more money to be had, and there's no way that she can fix the budgetary hole by going to the people and say, let's pay more in property taxes, but I'm also showing you I'm cutting XYZ. If she also then has to say, oh, and by the way, I signed a deal with the CTU that's going to guarantee a X%. We're talking about $200, according to the interview I did with Miley Smith of Illinois Policy. $200 is the average price that the property tax rates would go up for an individual here in Chicago. If you own like a $250,000 piece of property, your taxes are going to go up $200 or more. What Mayor Lightfoot and CPS have been advocating for? $13. That's a much more reasonable ask of people. But instead, here we are, heading into the weekend, not a damn thing being done about this. Not a damn thing from CTU. It's an absolute joke. And frankly, in Illinois, we should be looking at making a law that says you cannot strike. Wisconsin doesn't do it. Iowa doesn't do it. Literally, nobody that borders the state of Illinois allows teacher strikes. Not a one. Why? Because you're hurting the kids. Get your asses into the classroom, get to the bargaining table, get this done over the weekend. You should be ashamed of yourselves for wasting an entire week over some political bullshit. All right. There you have the rants of Coppins for you, folks. Whew. All right. As we wind down, head towards the weekend, we're going to talk about Hong Kong next and strikes there. Why the hell not, right? But remember this whole Hong Kong democracy thing? Probably not lately because, well, the mainstream media has decided to go bye-bye. They don't even want to highlight this stuff anymore. Why? Because it's probably inconvenient for them to play the long game. Or, this is my other theory here, they don't really want to side with real freedom anymore. You got to remember that the people that are in charge of the mainstream media, that report in the mainstream media, that are on your television from the mainstream media, are lockstep. Over 95% of them are deep, dyed-in-the-wool leftists. Not even run-of-the-mill Democrats. Not even your, old school Joe Biden, not the new school Joe Biden type of Democrats. 95% of the mainstream media exists in leftist ideology. They don't believe in American freedom. They don't believe in individual liberties. They believe in collectivism at a bare minimum and socialism more likely. So it would be very inconvenient of them to highlight advocacy for anything else. Now, there definitely was a story when the protests started because you had millions and millions of people in the streets protesting that whole situation with the extradition law. Now, news this week is that what? That extradition bill that sparked all of this has been completely officially killed. It was unofficially killed by Carrie Lam, the province head figure, the Chinese prop, if you will, had basically killed it. Now it's officially dead. Now, the other piece of news is that China is now considering replacing the leader, Carrie Lam. Now, I'm not sure if that's really going to be a good piece of news for the pro-freedom and democracy protesters, because again, Chinese government is communist. They kind of hate freedom. They kind of hate democracy. I don't know how you get that over the border. But anyway, I really don't see a good end to all of this because here's what's gone on in the interim that the media will not tell you. That this had gone from a protest over extradition, that extradition bill, to a full-blown ask of leave us the hell alone, give us our sovereignty, we don't even want to be part of China anymore movement. They want their freedom, capital F freedom. They want democracy. So either one of two things happens. Either China relents and runs the risk of having to be seen, capitulating to democracy, or they crush this protest a la Tiananmen Square. And we all know how that turned out for the Chinese on the propaganda side. And then you have this whole Hong Kong, NBA, China situation. Somehow now, according to Chinese state media, apparently criticism of LeBron James is racist, yada, yada, yada. What I would suggest on that whole situation is look up the NBA on TNT and what they did on Wednesday night. They had this panel, I think it was Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley, Ernie Johnson, and Shaq. It was one of the best discussions. We don't see our politicians do this. So I would highly recommend you do that. But my biggest problem was with Charles Barkley in this whole notion that protecting the money was an okay thing here. Okay? People are upset about this because LeBron and his ilk, they're supposed to be fighting for the underdog against social injustice. Again, LeBron is somebody who tweeted out MLK's and injustice anywhere is the threat to justice everywhere quote. Is this not an injustice? Is this not something bad happening? Nike also had a ton to lose in all of this situation. They chose to just shut up and take the money. But remember, they told us all when they signed Colin Kaepernick to this massive athlete deal that standing for something, even if it means losing everything, is important. That's the whole Just Do It campaign, right? Bull crap. You don't even stand by your own words. It's just a marketing gimmick. And that's what has so many people upset here, is that this is all about being craven. It's all about hypocrisy. You've got it all over the place on this specific issue. Okay? So, like I said, if you didn't see the clip, play it for yourself. You can find it all over social media. Just know that overall, this was a really cool conversation because there were different angles and different ideas presented in a calm, really respectful manner. And voila, you had a discussion and people can make their choices based off the information and the opinions that were given. What a novel concept in today's politicized world. And before we get going any further here, folks, we have an update. As I was talking about earlier in the show, the judge in the case of James Younger, that 7-year-old boy whose mom claims he is a girl and trying to transition that boy, well, it turns out the judge overruled the jury. A little bit of sanity has taken place. And it turns out, according to the Daily Wire, on Thursday, Judge Kim Cooks ruled Texas father Jeffrey Younger has a say in his 7-year-old son's gender transition, which is being facilitated by the boy's mother and Younger's ex-wife, Dr. Ann Gregorius. Younger is attempting to halt the boy's transition. Cooks of the 255th District ruled that the parents will have joint conservatorship over James, which includes making joint medical decisions for the child, according to LifeSite News. Now, Cooks also placed a gag order on Younger, according to Jacob, so that he cannot speak to the press about the case, and decided that the father is not required to pay attorney fees. That's a good situation here. That is the better outcome if taking the bad outcome of the 7-year-old being forced into transitioning and all that. Okay? So that's good news. I just don't understand this gag order, unfortunately, because there's no gag order on the mother as far as I'm concerned. What's to stop the mom from going out there and advocating for transition and yada, 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 right? So I think this is good news all the way around. A little bit of sanity prevailed in this insane story. In about an hour or 2 hours, we got the news that we were looking for. So that is really, really good news. And I think we're going to end the show right here on that. Again, thank you to Dominic Izzo for letting me fill in the last show on Monday, right here in this time slot. You will see and hear Izzo back from God knows what he was doing, maybe something about cigars and his lady friends and parts unknown. Anyway, I really say thank you to Dominic for this opportunity. I hope everybody has enjoyed what I've been able to bring to the table for these past 2 hours. If you like it, head on over to your favorite podcasting app. Click on the subscribe button to Critical Thinking with Andrew Coppins. You can always tune in live via Facebook and via iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and Mojo50.com, 5 p.m. Central Time every Saturday. Please join me on that note. Be smart, be safe, keep on being the amazing people that you are.